welcome back to another episode of Stories from the Shed. My name is Adam, and again with me this week, a man who finished a 14-day diet in 3 hours and 10 minutes. Jake, how you doing?
I feel fat.
Yeah, you look fat. How you?
Thanks. Wow. How the fuck did that happen? I walked right into that one. Surprisingly, I fit through the door.
And with us this week, as you hear her giggling, we have my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
How you doing?
Oh, good. Just got out of work. Feel like crap. I got that cold that everyone's coming down with. And
Reese gave it to you.
Reese definitely gave it to me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming out anyways. I know this is a story that you know a lot about, so you'll definitely be able to add to it. And Jake, how was your week?
It was good. I had the day off today.
Oh,
It was
nice.
awesome. I didn't have to do a goddamn thing.
But you did.
Oh, I did. I fixed the stupid charger port thing in my car, so now I can charge my phone in my car. That's really nice. I did some laundry. I guess did all the adult things nobody wants to do.
I had a pretty good week, too. It was same old shit, you know.
Yeah.
All one day runs right into another, but
Yeah.
been busy. I'm glad it's a Friday night.
You got recognized.
Recognized.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
We're blowing up.
we're
All
blowing up.
600 and something downloads.
Yes.
Yep.
Keep them coming.
That's right.
And yeah, so it was a pretty good week. What are we drinking today?
We're drinking Crushable Sam 76s.
They're refreshing, flavorful, and they're craft.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Where did you get the Crushable?
Says it on the box.
It does?
Crushable.
Oh.
Yeah. On the
Now,
box.
do they mean crushable like I can take them and crush them with my hand, or like you can drink 20 of these?
You got to take the can and just like slam it right into your forehead. And,
Oh, I'm already brain dead enough. I don't need
Yeah.
any
They,
help.
they want you to crush it. This is meant for college frat parties and shit. Crush that can.
They are a good beer though.
They're delicious. Got a
sure.
good flavor.
You
It's
can
got
drink a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is we've got a heavy story tonight. So I said maybe we'll step back from our traditional IPAs and stouts and stuff like that, and maybe have something with a little less alcohol so we can help us get through this.
That didn't stop me from drinking a 25-ounce Twisted Tea on the way here, though.
I know you're a champ.
Yeah, I try.
Everybody, Jake is not a quitter.
Okay, well, I can't say on the way here. I guess on the way to the shed.
On the way to the
from, like,
shed.
the house to the shed, but not when I was driving here. You know what I'm saying?
What you're saying is you cracked the can in my doorway.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's get that shit straight.
Understood.
So that's good. I'm going to give these a 4.5 Scully finger rating, and the only reason is the reason why we picked it today. I wish I had a little more kick to it, but
Right.
that's why it's not going to get that full 5 out of me, but I'll give it 4.5.
What do you give it, Sarah?
I give it a 4.5.
I'm going to give it a 4, and the only reason I'm going to give it a 4 is because I wish they sold them in glass bottles. That's the only complaint I have.
I'm gonna go with that too. I mean, still a 4.5, but
Wow.
definitely the glass
I'm a
bottles.
leader, a trendsetter.
That's right. So
Well, that's why a lot of times you got to have it in a glass.
Oh,
Pour it in
yeah.
a glass.
And I keep forgetting, I was telling Adam earlier, I got a box of glasses in a Christmas gift swap type thing with the family. I want to bring them here so we can have them, and I just keep forgetting to grab them.
yeah, we could use that in the shed.
Yeah, right.
For
We'll bring
sure.
them this summer. They're football shaped. We'll be watching sports out here anyway.
Yeah, there's nothing on tonight.
Yep,
But
with our 32-inch TV, we're going to mount up on the wall somehow.
yes,
Yes. Shed's getting upgrades.
yes, shed upgrades.
And insulation.
Yes,
Yes.
not too cold tonight.
No, it's really not. Well, we got 2 heaters going. We got the electric heater just for a little bit to get the place comfortable, and then we got a propane heater that we're going to kind of maintain it with, I guess.
Maintain it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that thing works pretty good. So,
Hopefully it don't set the table on fire.
well, we've got a pretty heavy story today, Jake. What are we going over?
We're going to go over the... Are we really going over it? Yeah, kind of.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah,
We're gonna.
I guess.
What's our topic of the night?
We're going to talk about the West Memphis 3.
Yes,
Have any of you guys heard of that?
I'm sure they have.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's
I'll be honest, I didn't hear about it till you brought it up.
Really?
And then I started researching it, and I'm like, holy shit. This is a
Deep.
crazy story.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of in a way still going. So it's still kind of a current thing, even though it happened in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And with this here, we do got to give a couple of shout outs to our research. As this happened, there was a documentary crew from HBO that had went down there a couple of days after the fact, and they had made a very long 6-hour documentary of this, which we all watched. It was called the Paradise Lost Trilogy. And
Okay, well, before you go further with that, what's a quick synopsis of this case? Why was HBO down there?
Oh, well, basically there was a crime that was committed involving 3 young children.
What happened to them?
They were well. they were.
I know
they
I'm
were,
asking obvious questions, but
they were found dead in the bottom of a creek,
okay.
and with no
Okay.
real solid explanation why.
Okay.
So HBO was like, let's turn this into some money, and they sent a crew down
Wow.
there to make a documentary.
I hope you're not their press whatever.
No, but anyways, 6-hour documentary. It's really good. And then there's a book that we had read too. Sarah, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
It's called The Devil's Knot. It's written by Mara Leverett. She also is in the Paradise Lost.
Yeah, she's in the kind of at a loss of words there. No, it's a well written book, and it really covers some of the details that the documentary misses.
Yeah.
So together, it does help bring the story, especially the earlier parts of the stories, together. Now there was also, Jake, another documentary that we had watched.
Yeah, I forget what it was called, but we had found it for free on YouTube. Something. I don't know.
West
I got
of Memphis.
West of Memphis.
Yep.
Okay, that's what it was. I'll be honest with you. I got like an hour into it, and it was one of those things that I watched like a Wednesday night, 9:30 at night. I got the laptop half on, half off the bed with headphones on, and I fell asleep. But I've been so wiped this week, except for Friday, because I took Friday off. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was good anyway, and after we had spent 6 hours watching Paradise Lost, we no joke, spent a whole day watching that.
Whole day. Yeah.
And I feel like I know this enough that that's really all I needed to see.
I thought that the West of Memphis kind of brought the story more current into the 2000s with the modernized, DNA and such.
Right.
And then there's also the Hollywood movie, which is called the Devil's Knot.
I think so.
Yes, it was also called The Devil's Knot. That was also pretty good, too.
That was a really good one. And you were telling me that a lot of the things or a lot of the script was not word for word what people were saying, but pretty close.
They really pieced it together
They
well.
did a really, really, really good job putting that story together, because you watch a documentary and you watch the Hollywood film, and everything fits pretty much seamlessly together.
So I guess what we're trying to say is that if you
Watch
find
them.
this story to be interesting,
Just do it. Just watch them.
there's a whole lot of back information on it that you can
Get
you
yourself
can
some
find.
Netflix or Hulu, or dig out the old DVD player if you even know what those are anymore.
Yeah, and check this out. But so this story begins on May 5th of 1993. And I want to say that the information that we're going to be covering today was put together through police interviews and courtroom testimony. So this is hopefully right down to the closest to the actual facts as possible.
And that's what we're hoping for.
So anyways, on that day, at around 3 p.m., Steve Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers. Now, these are second graders, 8 years old. They leave their elementary school. According to the mother, Pam Hobbs, Steve went home right after school, but left shortly thereafter. So he probably went home, got a quick snack, and was ready to go out and play with some friends. It was a warm day. It was about 80 degrees that day.
Yep.
So why wouldn't they get out and go hang out?
Now, where are they exactly? What part of the country are they in?
West Memphis, Arkansas.
West Memphis. Okay, perfect.
Yep. Yeah, West Memphis, Arkansas. Now, at around 3:10, so shortly thereafter, Christopher Byers' stepfather, John Mark Byers, he arrives home, but states that Christopher was not there.
Okay, so Steve showed up at the house, and then 10 minutes later was gone, and Dad came home from doing whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
Whatever
everything
Dad
happened
does.
so close that that's what I would guess. Now, around 3:30, the boy's brother, Ryan, he arrives home. Christopher did not have a key to get into the house, so supposedly he had to wait for his brother to let him inside. Probably wanted him to be supervised once he got into the house.
Makes sense.
Now, between 4 and 5:30 p.m., John Mark Byers drops Ryan off, his oldest stepson, at the courthouse for an appointment. He then,
Oh.
Yeah, real nice, huh?
Oh, okay.
Who knows? I
Interesting.
mean, we can only speculate, but
No speculation.
he was then picked up.
No judgment.
He then picked up Christopher's mother, Melissa Byers, from her place of employment. Upon their arrival home at approximately 5:20, they discovered that Christopher was not present, so he still hadn't returned. Although there was evidence indicating that he had been home. Okay, so that sounds like he might have gone there. Maybe same kind of deal as a kid grabbed a snack, hit the
Yeah.
road to go find the friends.
Yeah, got back on his bike, and went to go hang out with his friends.
Yeah. So
Nothing out of the ordinary.
Shortly after all that, John Byers left to go pick up Ryan at the courthouse. So he's heading back out into town now. On the way, he spots Christopher playing with his skateboard. Now, we took the boy home, and on his accounts, he gave him 3 licks. He gave him a whooping.
A whooping.
And this was because he was punishing him for playing with a skateboard dangerously. He explains he was laying on the skateboard. He's
in the road.
In the road doing something dangerous. And you know what? This is the middle of the country. And that might be, and at its time in the early 90s, would have maybe been a typical way of handling something like that. It's not certainly something I would do. But still, hey, that's kind of what he does.
Okay, so quick question for you. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I had read something else, or I'd heard something else, that Chris had come home, and John Mark Byers had got upset at him for breaking a window trying to get into the house or something, or like damage the window. Is that something else that I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of a different person.
No, I think that's something that was an earlier incident.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So maybe they had an argument earlier, or they had a discussion earlier that week.
Or something,
earlier that
or
day
it
or
had
something.
happened in the past sometime.
Yeah, it happened relatively recently. Yeah, okay.
So after he's finished disciplining Christopher, he then instructs him to clean up the carport. The child does as he's told.
Carport?
Yeah.
Wow, who the hell's got a carport?
Well, this is 1993 in West Memphis.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
And so the child did as he was told and was last seen by John Mark Byers at about 5:30 p.m. Now, 6 p.m. that night, Diane Moore, mother of Michael Moore, saw her son Steve Branch, and Christopher Byers riding bicycles. The boys rode away before she could stop them.
What was she trying to stop them from doing? Riding bikes?
Probably to tell them to not go.
What an impressive mother.
Well, probably to tell them not to go play in Robin Hood Hills, which is where they were headed. And a lot of the parents in that neighborhood didn't like the kids playing there because there was water and there's, two very busy highways intersecting that area. So,
yep.
But they were seen going in that direction. And now at 6:30 p.m., John Mark Byers claims that he and Ryan returned from the courthouse to find Christopher gone. Melissa was on the phone at the time and did not know that her child had left. So you know how that goes. Mother was probably distracted. Not a big deal,
Yeah, right.
A few minutes later, Melissa, John, and Ryan left to drive around the neighborhood, start looking for Christopher. Now it's 6:30. They're probably hungry, and he's probably home by this time, but he just wasn't. But John Byers says he told the police officer afterwards that according to Byers, he was told that he would wait until 8 p.m. before the police would take official report. So I believe what had happened was after they drove around,
probably called
the police, and then they kind of, hey, just relax. The kid's probably going to be home.
Yeah, right.
But Byers did tell the authorities at that time that Christopher never disappears. He's usually back on time. He's a responsible kid. And
he listens to every word I have to say.
Yeah. And so this concerned Byers.
Right.
So then again at 8 p.m., between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m., John Byers again contacted the West Memphis police to report Christopher missing. So this is the second attempt. Officer Regina Meeks was sent to the home of the Byers to take this report. Mm-hmm. Now at 8:45, Diane Moore told John Byers that she had last seen the boys at around 6 p.m., to which Mr. Byers said that this was the first time he had ever been aware that Christopher was not alone. Alone. My bad. Diane Moore, Melissa, Ryan, and John Byers set out to search for the boys.
Yep. They ended up in the Robin Hood Hills area, and that's where Moore had last seen the boys. By this time, night had already fallen. Between 8:30 and 10, Mr. Byers had gone back home to change clothes and brought out a pair of overalls and boots and started looking for the boys.
It's probably because the mosquitoes were thick in that area, and
they were out looking in the woods.
Gonna go in the thick of the
stuff
woods,
like that, right? Exactly. By the time Byers had changed into all these clothes, whole neighborhood was out looking for these kids. No one really knew where they were. It wasn't like these kids to not come home, and everyone was really concerned. It was a tight-knit community.
Yeah, a lot of houses close by, and it seemed like everybody knew everybody.
At about 11, John Byers goes home and calls the sheriff and asks for a search and rescue team. He claims that he was told to call Denver Reed, leader of the Crittenden County team, the following morning. He left the house again and drove to the Blue Beacon truck wash and tells people he's looking for Chris and two other boys. Pulls his truck behind a building where he and Ryan, who is Chris's older brother, shout out for the boys and honk the horn, trying to get some attention, trying to see if there's someone out there that can hear this. After an undisclosed amount of time, they go home. They meet with Melissa Byers, Stephen Branch's grandfather, Terry Hobbs, and Diane Moore at the house, and they decide to search the woods again.
Sounds like they're kind of coming together, as the families to formulate some kind of a search plan.
Right. That's what it sounds like to me anyway.
Yeah.
So the next day, really kind of the next morning, not even really the next morning, but early in the morning, the following day,
Yeah.
May 6th, Sergeant Ball of the West Memphis Police Department at sometime between 1:30 and 3 a.m. drive to the Byers' home to tell them that the police search is underway. He leaves the home at about 2 a.m. Tony Hudson, a friend of John Byers, and Byers leave to search the Mid-Continent building, which was being rebuilt. I'm assuming maybe that was like an abandoned building or something they were doing some sort of construction on,
Yeah,
right?
and there was a thought that maybe the kids had played there, and if
maybe someone had gotten injured.
something could have happened, they could have fallen in
Right.
somewhere. Yeah, that was a thought. Yeah.
Okay, well, that makes sense. They see a black van parked nearby on their arrival, and they assume it belongs to one of the workers. Hudson and Byers come home at about 3 and intend to continue searching in the morning. They're beat.
Yeah. I mean, they've been at it all night.
Right. They didn't even get more than 3-4 hours sleep, because at 6:30, John Mark Byers calls Denver Reed and arranges a meeting at 8 a.m. The search resumes in this hour-and-a-half time frame, supposedly. At 1:45 in the afternoon.
So they've been searching all day.
Oh, yeah.
At this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So at 1:45 in the afternoon, they make their first discovery of a body. Not what you really want to hear, but they make their first discovery of a body in the woods behind the Blue Beacon.
Yeah. Now, what had happened was they were believed to have played down there. I mean, that's where had been last seen, was going in that area. So the police were not done scouring that area. Now, they had went and searched. They didn't find anything. Mm-hmm. But as they were leaving, basically, one of them sees a shoe floating in the water. And then he thinks, well, I didn't see that before. I'd already searched this area.
Right.
So then he is like, shoe in the water, or we've got to get into the water and see what we can find.
Yeah, right. Considering these boys are missing.
Now, this is like a silt-like bottom, so as he's walking into it, as you can imagine, he's knee-deep into the mud. Mm-hmm. And he stops to talk to one of the other investigators that's on the hill. But as he does touch, he feels like he's stuck, like he's got his foot underneath a branch of a tree, if you can imagine that.
Huh.
As he kind of stumbles back and falls.
Yeah, maybe something fell in.
The lifeless body of one of the children raises to the top of the water.
Oh.
And that's how they knew that.
Oh.
That's how that had happened.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Imagine being that guy.
Yeah. And so about an hour later at 2:45, between 2:45 and 4 p.m., really,
Yep.
the second and the third bodies were found. 25 and 30 feet away from the first body, the county coroner arrives at 3:05 p.m. So what you get the big point of that is from what I'd read, was the body sat on the riverbank.
Yeah, they pulled him out of the water.
Do you know how long, Sarah?
I think it was like 2 hours.
Yeah, that's what I had read.
And it was hot. They were baking in the sun.
They shouldn't have touched the bodies.
So they should have left it in the water, because
Right.
it would have preserved it a little bit more. Bugs, flies were flying all over them, and just that hot sun was just cooking off any evidence.
Yeah, so that didn't help. So
Right. Now I know they're in the water, and anything, there's a potential that evidence could be washed away, but I would think they'd want to just leave them where they were. God,
Well,
this is such a sad thing to talk about, but
you're absolutely
you
right.
would think they'd want to leave them where they were, so when the coroner shows up, he can see how they were placed. I don't know if that helps determine motivation or anything at all, really.
Well, what it was is it was also
why would
hot
you
that
pull 'em
day.
out of the
It was about
water?
80 degrees, and the water temperature being 60 degrees, being much colder than the outside temperature, is
Yeah.
going to help to preserve the body
I would think so.
from rotting. It's going to resist any. I mean, it still wouldn't leave it susceptible to other creatures in the water by leaving it in the water. But basically, long story short, for our listeners, if you guys ever find a body in the water, leave it there and call somebody. Don't try to take it out yourself.
As much as you want to take it out and kind of preserve it, and
Just don't touch it.
yeah,
It's evidence.
yeah.
Don't touch it.
I can kind of
Yeah.
see
I hope none of you-
why they removed it in a way, because they didn't, they wanted to take the bodies out of the water. It wasn't a place for children to be, but just leave the kids in the water.
Yeah, this
leave,
is not
leave the bodies in the water.
This is not a situation that anyone wants to come across either. I hope none of you ever have to do that. That's no fun. I don't know about you guys, but I've come across a couple of odd things. I'm not gonna say I've come across dead bodies, but I've come across some odd things before.
Well, and speaking of
sure.
odd things, also the night of this disappearance at a close by chicken restaurant called a Bojangles.
Bojangles.
Yeah, it's something I guess like a KFC.
Oh, okay. It's like a Southern KFC.
Well, KFC is pretty Southern because that'd be Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, but it's better up here. I'll be honest. I've had it in the South and I've had it here, and I enjoy it more.
Either way, it's one of those kind of places.
The South has another really good restaurant called Hardee's.
Yeah,
I know you guys know what that is.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Anyway, sorry.
So,
oh, it's so good.
So, anyways, there was another. This was a particularly busy night for the West Memphis police, being a small town, just a couple of cops, and probably at night, probably even less cops, I'd imagine. But,
I would imagine.
Anyways, at this Bojangles, Sarah,
They received a phone call that there was a male that had come running into the Bojangles, and he was full of blood. And he ran into the woman's bathroom.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little odd. I can't imagine that happens every day.
Well, and it's believed that he smeared blood on the walls on the way there. But the cop, Regina Meeks, the one that had also taken the John Mark Byers call, just goes to the drive-thru and just takes kind of a quick report because there's missing kids.
Wait, they go through the drive-thru?
Yeah, she went to the drive-thru, talked to the manager there.
That doesn't... What? That sounds... Why? Why you can't even take the time to go in? Someone runs into your restaurant full of blood. The cops can't even bother to go in?
Well, I think because they had other things going on that might have been more important. Maybe she didn't want to go in there as a single officer.
Oh, okay.
She
was a single officer at that point.
To deal with, I don't know.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
plus the guy had taken off by then. But just kind of a side note, it's unusual for somebody to run into a restaurant smearing blood and kind of going nuts in a bathroom.
Yeah, after everything had calmed down from the night, I think a few days later, they had gone in and taken or had spoken to the owner of Bojangles.
Yeah, the manager.
And, they also took some evidence of the blood, and that was the end of that.
That was the end of that, yeah.
Yeah, no further investigation. Awesome.
So with this here, they searched for approximately a month, and as things were not really coming of anything, and the West Memphis police started to feel a lot of pressure to find something.
Find a killer.
Now, what ends up happening is they call in a woman, Vicki Hutchinson, into the West Memphis Police Department on a side note. It's something that, I mean, not a side note, but it was on a totally separate incident. Basically, she had worked at that Blue Beacon truck diner, car wash, kind of a place, like a big fancy Irving.
Yep.
She had worked there, and she had run a $200 credit card fraud thing there. Probably took a trucker's card and ran some extra stuff on that.
So it sounds like a side thing that's going on in town.
Well, it is, but it does kind of play into this, Jake, because when she does show up, she does bring her son, Aaron, I believe is his name, Aaron Hutchinson, which is kind of odd, and the police think it's kind of odd because they're like, we're going to be interrogating you here, or questioning you here, rather, on this credit card fraud, and you're kind of bringing your 8-year-old kid. Needless to say, they continue with the questioning, and as they start to get into what she had done with the credit card, she quickly changes the subject and says, well, my son Aaron was friends with, these kids, and he might have something to share with this, with this story. And
right.
What he says is that he sees, I believe at that time he says he sees Jesse Miss Kelly and a couple of others go into the woods with them, follow them into the woods. Yeah. And
interesting.
She also then goes on to say, he doesn't remember too much at that time, I believe. He does get questioned several times, and his story continues to get crazier as it goes down. But
so it keeps on changing, which kind of leads you to believe, if she's in trouble with card debt,
right,
then maybe she needs money.
Well, and that's I'm glad you bring that up, because there is a $35,000 reward at this time.
To find the killer.
That's something that's going to lead to the arrest and conviction of who did this.
Okay, so now I'm gonna lead you back a little bit. Who does this kid say did this. Jesse Miskelly. What are the other people's names?
And he doesn't say that he did it. He says that he saw them following the
Together.
3 boys into the Robin Hood woods.
Okay, but who are the other people that were with Jesse?
Jason Baldwin and Damien
Eccles.
Eccles.
Damien Eccles. Okay, and the reason I did that is because I'm going to lead you back a couple steps here.
Okay.
Unknown to Vicky Hutchinson at the time, at least as far as I understand, Damien Eccles had already been interviewed by the police on May 7th about this. May 9th, police interview him again along with his girlfriend at the time, Dominique Tier, who was pregnant, by the way, and Jason Baldwin, one of his good friends. Damien was suspected probably because of the personality he had. Yeah, he was really into heavy metal music, and he was studying to be a priest, but he was kind of venturing off into other religions and trying to see the world from other religious perspectives, and he was really into the occult at the time. So people thought he was weird. He dressed in black. He was just an odd guy.
Yeah, and also with Damien Eccles, he had spent some time in a psychiatric hospital, and after that, the police continued to question him whenever anything would happen in town.
Right.
He was always...
To lead it even further back, the police, they were getting pressure from everyone, but they also, they came up with a list of who could have done this. And it just so happened that Damien Eccles was on that list. They had all kinds of other people on that list. But because he was into... wearing black and
Metallica.
He liked Metallica, and he was into Wiccan. They, just kind of
were quickly to judge him.
To just jump on that.
And so with the statement from Aaron Hutchinson, putting those guys with them going into the woods, it's almost like having an eyewitness to the people that they're already considering.
Right. Now, Damien had been interviewed multiple times, 2 or 3 actually. May 10th, he was interviewed again by Lieutenant Sudbury and Detective Byrne Ridge. He was unaccompanied by his lawyer at the time. He was administered, or a lawyer. I don't think he had his own lawyer. He was administered a polygraph by Detective Durham, and according to Byrne Ridge's notes, Durham reported that Damien had been untruthful and, according to the polygraph, was involved in the killing of these kids. So 2 days later, they interview his mom, and she gives him a solid out. Damien was at home with me and his sister and the girlfriend, watching movies, hanging out, talking on the phone, whatever.
But as this is all going on, the claims from Vicky Hutchinson and her son continue to get worse.
Right.
And it gets to a point where
to get where you had gone into right here.
Yeah, where she, as a private citizen, on May 19th,
about a month later,
approximately a month later, and with all the heat on the police, she volunteers to become like a citizen detective and do her own investigation into this case. She then she figures that a good way for her to be introduced to Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin would be through Jesse Miskelly, who had done some work for her, cutting her grass and such.
Now we have to add this in before we go any further with Jesse Miskelly, because you're going to start seeing all these little things that happen with this guy as we get further into the story. Jesse Miskelly is not, I'm not going to say he's R-worded, but he's not very bright. His IQ measured at like 73 or something at the time.
Right.
And I understand that some people would look at that and it's just a number. But you have to understand that people who have a low IQ do not think the same as other people.
Maybe easily manipulated.
Exactly. So you kind of have to look out for those people.
Right.
And she basically decided she was going to take advantage of Jesse.
Right.
And try to get all the information she could while putting on this facade that, oh, I'm your friend. We should hang out. We should do this. We should do that.
Right.
She did that with Damien too.
Yeah.
Right. But now, before we get into how she meets up with Damien, maybe it's time to take a quick break.
I am okay with that. I'm ready for another beer, I think. Hooray.
Jesse Miskelly Jr., Jason Baldwin, Damian Eccles, I hope your master, the devil, does take you soon. I want you to meet him real soon. And the day you die, I'm going to praise God. And I make you a promise. The day you die, every year on May 5th, I'm going to come to your graveside. I'm going to spit on you. I'm going to curse the day you were born. And I'm sure while I'm standing there, I'm going to have other bodily functions let go upon your grave. I promise you, as God is my witness, I'll visit all 3 of your graves.
I know we had a break for this, but I wanted to save opening my beer for this because I wanted to do it at the beginning of the show.
Oh, that was considerate of you.
Oh, I thought so. I thought so.
Good beer break, though.
Right? I'll have another one of these 76s.
Yeah,
I wish
just-
we had the glasses, though.
They're just like water.
That's the thing. Whoa, where did this font menu come from? Okay, where did we leave off?
We left off with, I believe, Vicky Hutchinson was about to have Jesse Miskelly introduce. Yeah,
that hoe, trying to be friends and get some information out of you.
Just a thought.
Sorry, that's not a nice word.
So what so what she ends up doing is she has Miskelly introduce her to Damian Eccles and Jason Baldwin.
Okay.
Now, at the recommendation of the detective that she had been meeting with, she had kind of voodooed up her house a little bit, witchcraft.
Voodooed up her house, like Godsmack voodoo.
She witchcraft up
Well,
the
she
house.
wanted to welcome in a Wiccan.
So she get a Ouija board and put a pentagram on her floor with the candles and stuff.
I don't know, but she did some kind of bizarre shit. And
Adam was complaining about the lack of jokes, so I'm just going to try to throw him in on everything from here on in.
It's hard to on this one, but
I know.
You get Dino rolling under there even with the lack of jokes.
Stop it.
But so what they end up doing is she becomes friends with these guys, and they supposedly invite her to an SBAT. Which
the hell is an SBAT?
Yeah, did you read any about that?
It is where a bunch of people run around naked dancing.
Well, this sounds like fun.
This sounds like the gathering of the Juggalos.
Is there any SBATs around here?
I hope not.
But there's a little more to it. This SBAT, she said that the people had been painted black. And
so they were wearing blackface. Now they're racist.
Well, they were painted black, and they were doing some of the same.
The racism.
Well,
in
they
this
were
country
naked,
just never
painted
stops.
black, and they were all dancing around and touching and loving each other.
So Vicky says at the sight of this, she's terrified, and she asks Damien to drive her home.
Wait, Damien doesn't drive, does he?
Well, that's what she says. That Damien, you are right. Damien does not drive, but this is how her story goes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Lion bitch.
Yeah. So that's kind of where that went.
I don't trust her.
And then she reports that story to the authorities. And Jake, so what happens next?
When was that? They go to the SBAT.
They'll take us to May 27th.
On May 19th, right, is when they go to that thing?
Yes.
Okay, so about a week later on May 27th, she gets back in touch with the police. She was interviewed, tells them of evidence suggesting that Damian Eccles and Jesse Miskelly were involved in both cult activities and the murder of 3 boys. Aaron Hutchinson, who is her 8-year-old, tells police that he and the 3 murdered boys often went to the Robin Hood's woods together, and they had seen 5 men in the woods sitting in a circle, singing songs to the devil and doing what men and ladies do. So they ran into some sort of weird Craigslist meetup.
Yeah, kind of a thing.
Yeah, something
also,
weird.
On a side note, around this same time frame, there are some kids that reported hearing Damian Eccles at a softball field, some kind of recreational field, saying that he had, done things to these kids. Did you guys read that or see any of that?
Yeah.
So that's something else that that had happened around that same time frame. So things are starting to really mount up against these guys, and I think the police are starting to think that they have some kind of case building up.
Yep. June 3rd, police decide they're going to question Jesse about the murders again. They tell Jesse there is a $35,000 reward for info leading to the convictions in this case. He takes a polygraph, and he initially denies participating in either satanic rituals or the murders. So Jesse's already like, no, I had nothing to do with this.
Right. Kind of probably answering the questions honestly because he's not feeling a whole lot of pressure, I'm assuming this being his first interview. Or not his first interview, but one of his early on interviews. Probably his first one where they're really suspecting him, though.
This might be the one. Yeah, okay. So obviously he denies it. Detective Durham tells another officer that he's lying his ass off, quote unquote, after hours of hard questioning by, I'm assuming, Detective Gitchell?
Yes.
Detective Gitchell and Bird Ridge?
Briar Ridge.
Whatever the hell is it.
Sounds like an ice cream brand.
Yeah, no shit, right? And it doesn't even sound like a good ice cream brand.
Nah, it's Cumby's brand. Anyways.
Ugh. So Jesse starts telling the officers what they want to hear. He and Damien and Jason committed the murders. Officers are troubled by inconsistencies. Jesse starts saying that the murders occurred in the day when they actually occurred at night. And they had tied the boys up with rope. And that was not the case. And we'll get into that a little bit. But this would be a good time to put in some things that are very interesting about this particular questioning of Jesse. They questioned him for over 12 hours.
Yes.
They only recorded the last,
I think
40, 45 minutes
I've heard two different reports. I've heard 41 minutes and I've heard 46.
Yeah,
but not much. I mean, 12 hours of really, beating this guy in.
Now, I would think that you would want to record the entire interview, and this is just from like, if I was a cop, I would want, I feel like this would be the smartest thing to do. You'd want to record from the moment they walk in to the moment they walk out.
That would be being thorough.
Videotape of the moment they walk in and the moment they walk out.
Yes, and you want that right on their face. You want to watch all of the little micro movements of their eyes and everything about them, because body language says more than words do.
And I think it's also important to note that, like you said, Jesse Miskelly is not the brightest. And he's also, this entire time that he's being interrogated, he doesn't have a lawyer present. His father had just dropped him off because his father says, well, you know what? They're probably just going to ask him questions about what happened. He's just going to tell them what they know, and I'll go pick them up after, And
now also the polygraph test that was given to him, the only thing that he was found lying of was doing drugs, whether it was it marijuana?
I think so.
That he lied on. He said that he never had done marijuana, and he lied about that. That was the only thing that he lied about. Anything else that they questioned him on, he passed.
Huh. So I wonder why they would say he's lying his ass off, and this is just speculation, at this point at least.
Well, it's a way to
are they
kind
trying
of
to frame him?
Get him to, okay, we know you're lying. Now you need to tell us the truth.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
And a lot of times you do find that, and not just in this case, but in other cases, the police will kind of lead people that are easily persuaded in the direction they need to be. Oh, what time did you see these kids? Oh, this happened at noon. Well, they were at school. Are you sure it wasn't a little bit later? Could it have been 3? Well, maybe it was 3. How about 5? It's 5. Now it's 6 o'clock, and then all of a sudden it's fitting the time frame.
Well, and they're not even doing it like that. They're just the way they question him. I remember watching this in the documentary. Is that they'll be like, okay, well, so did it happen after school? And he goes, yeah, after school. And they go, well, what was going on at about 5? And they kept pushing it later and later until it fit the context of what they were trying to put together.
Is there any way we can maybe cut in a little bit of Jesse Miskelly?
Yeah, we can probably
this
do
interrogation,
that.
Because there's a ton of that on YouTube we could put in there.
Yeah, hold up. Watch this.
You saw somebody with a knife. Who had a knife?
Jason.
Jason had a knife. What did he cut with the knife? What did you see him cut, or who did you see him cut?
I saw him cut one of the little boys.
All right, where did he cut him at?
He was cutting him in the face.
Cutting him in the face. All right. Another boy was cut, I understand. Where was he cut at?
At the bottom.
On his bottom? Was he face down and he was cutting on him, or?
Now, you talking about bottom, do you mean right here?
Mm-hmm.
In his growing area? Okay.
So you know what his penis is?
Yeah, that's where he was cut at.
That's where he was cut.
Which boy was that?
That right there.
You're talking about the Byers boy again? Okay.
Are you sure that he was the one that was cut?
That's when I seen him cutting on.
Wasn't Jesse wrestling that night?
Yeah, I had read something to the effect that he was actually in another county. It was, I believe, 40 miles away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he
Was he
aspired to be a wrestler, and he was there doing that. And there was a lot of people that could say, "Yeah, we
Yeah, he
saw
was
him.
here."
We saw
Yeah.
Miss Kelly there."
So there was a lot of corroboration for Jesse that night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
So how was he lying his ass off? And
Yeah, that's a great question.
yeah, but
why was that never brought up during the trial?
well, we're gonna get to that once we get to that point.
And keep in mind, again, Jesse is, again, not very bright. His IQ was tested between 67 and 75. He's very easy to lead into what they want him to say.
Yeah,
Like I said, you really need to watch out for these people, and it's not bad to say that. I really don't think
he had
so.
a mentality of a second grader, and
Right, and he's 17
he was
years old.
easily taken advantage of.
Did you
really?
see the part where they say something like they draw a circle, and they say,
Do you want to be in the circle?
with us?"
No.
kind of a thing?
Do you want to be in the circle with Damien and Jason, or do you want to be outside of the circle with us?
Yeah, so they start leading him that way.
Wow.
And so at that point, he's like, "Well, shit, I'm going to tell them whatever the hell they want to hear, so they can get out of here and go home and have supper.
Right.
I've
Yeah,
been here
right.
for 12 hours.
I didn't do this.
Yeah, I want to go home.
So that's
probably
kind
what he's
of
thinking.
I think that's kind of what happened here. But needless to say, what that led up to was 9 p.m. The authorities appeared before a municipal court judge
Yeah, the same day.
the same day, to request for search warrants of Jesse, Damien, and Jason's house.
What time did they go get that warrant?
Well, the request was at 9 p.m. And
That's
this is
pretty late.
Well, this is very unusual because the only time they will do these kind of search warrants and conduct them late at night like this is if they believe people are going to be endangered, or these people are at risk of being a runaway, or they're going to destroy evidence. But the thing is, this was over a month
Right.
since the crime.
If these guys wanted to run, they would have run already.
And if there was evidence to destroy, that shit would have been destroyed long in advance, I'd imagine.
They would have already tainted it when they pulled the three little boys out of the water.
Well, not just that, any evidence that they brought back to their house.
Right.
You know what I mean? Their clothes that they had worn.
Right.
If they had stuff that belonged to these children as
Right.
little souvenirs for their what they did, that kind of thing.
Right.
They had over a month to get rid of that, so there's no real point in doing this search warrant in the middle of the night.
Right.
But that's kind of what they did. And then at 10:30, so this all happened real quick.
June 3rd, 10:30 p.m. after questioning Jesse all day long.
Yeah. Then they go and they arrest Damien, Jason, and Jesse. And they charge all three of them with capital murder.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
3 counts each.
Yeah, that's how that goes down. Now, on June 4th, Detective Getchell holds a press conference and announces the arrest, and then he feels confident. And one of the media members asked him, "How do you feel about the case on a scale of 1 to 10?" And he looked at them and says, "An 11." So, I mean,
Wow.
even right there, he's setting that precedence with the media. We got the guy. We got to,
He sounds kind of confident.
Now, I don't know if they came right out and said they had the confession, because a lot of times the police will not.
Well, hold on. Why don't we let him speak for himself?
At a press conference, Inspector Gary Gitchell said the case against the accused teens is very strong.
Scale of 1 to 10, how solid do you think the case is?
11.
How do you guys think he sounded? You kind of sit on it for a minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, June 7th, a state judge appoints lawyers to represent each of the 3 defendants. These kids are from buttfuck nowhere, Arkansas. They can't afford top lawyers for this. They're being charged with 3 counts of capital murder apiece.
They're very poor kids that live in a very poor area.
They're between 16 and 18 years old.
Yeah.
They haven't even started life yet.
Yeah,
They're still in high school.
So that's what they get. And then these lawyers, from the time of June 7th till August 4th, they start to put together their case.
On August 4th, all 3 boys attend a pre-hearing before the judge, whose name is David Burnett, in Marion, Arkansas. Arkansas. It's not your Kansas, it's Arkansas.
Yes.
Judge Burnett rules Miss Kelly should be tried separately. Later, in another important ruling, Burnett decides that the state can introduce Miss Kelly's confession, confession, in air quotes. I wish you guys could see me air quoting.
Yeah, he is.
Despite evidence that it was obtained under coercive circumstances. Really?
His short confession, not his 12-hour confession.
Right.
His 40 to 45 minute
His 45-minute lead, I brought this camel to water, I'm going to make that motherfucker drink it.
At the end of the
confession.
confession.
Yeah, exactly. And that the defendants should be tried as adults rather than juveniles. Now, I can kind of see that just because they're pretty much adults. At 16, you can get a license. In some states, you can smoke. Like, you know.
I can't see that with Miss Kelly's IQ, though.
No, absolutely not. Not in his case.
Right.
But, okay, you know what? Then I guess that kind of negates my whole point. So anyway, September 93, John Fogelman conducts a series of under oath interviews with potential witnesses, including members of the defendants' families. John Fogelman is the prosecutor. And when you watch the documentary, and this is all filmed in the courtroom, so you can see it all happen, it looks like he's going after these guys.
Yeah.
And all of his evidence is very odd. And I'm sorry, I'm
well,
jumping
it
ahead.
all leads to guilt.
Well, no, nothing leads to anything because there's no evidence. But anyways.
Well,
anyway, sorry, I'm
he
jumping
tries
ahead.
to persuade everyone that there's guilt, period.
He's a good lawyer is what we're saying.
Yeah, he's good at his job.
He's good at what he does, and that's why we don't like him.
Yeah.
Basically.
November 10th, Judge Burnett rules that Miss Kelly's trial will open in Corning, Arkansas in January, and the trial of Eccles and Baldwin will take place in Jonesboro beginning in February.
Yeah, they didn't want them to be in the same locations. They wanted them to be a little bit outside of the area so that they would get a fair trial. Unfortunately, I feel like that's not even possible when the media has so much information and there's been so many twists to the story already at this point.
Not only that, when two of them are being tried together.
Right.
How is that a failed trial?
Right, and they separate the one, and it happens to be the one with a very noticeably low IQ.
Yeah.
It's very interesting how
so
that
they have
comes
him
out.
on one. They have Damien Eccles, who they've already been, keeping an eye on long before this has happened, and then you have Jason Baldwin, which is basically the guilt by association guy.
Yeah, kinda. Jason, and I highly encourage you guys to go and check some of this out if you guys don't know any context of the story at all. Jason's not a kid that would go out and do these things. You can just see it. He looks like a kid that just takes the lead of his friends.
Yeah.
He acts like a kid. Because I was that kid.
And I'm glad you said what you said, because when you tell this story through a podcast, you don't see the players.
Right.
And so, yeah, I would encourage people to check these people out. Because, I mean, this could be anybody's kid. This could have been anybody.
Right. And
any of them, really. I mean,
I feel like that kind of goes with all of our stories. We're going to sidetrack a tiny bit, and I promise I'm done. When you're telling a story, you're telling it through your own perspective. So I highly encourage everyone to go do their own research if you really like the story and draw your own conclusions. We can only offer our perspective.
Correct.
So anyway,
this will take us back to November 17th, right?
Yep.
Yes. Divers hired by the state Arkansas police search a lake behind the trailer of Jason Baldwin and Damien Eccles. They lived kind of in a little mobile home park area.
Yep.
They find a 9-inch long knife with a serrated edge and about 50 feet of water behind the house. Now, what I found interesting about this, well, what it was
house?
Jason's.
Okay.
Jason's, yeah, it was in their area. What's kind of funny is these guys, they go in there, and I think it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, and they find this knife like
immediately
within
they
just a few minutes.
and they find it, period.
Almost like somebody
There's
told
no
them.
searching. There's no, diving in 30 minutes, 40, 50 minutes. You go in and they found the knife.
Yeah.
They just found it.
Just by chance.
Yeah, right.
And now this is a big knife. It's like a fucking John Rambo, Crocodile Dundee knife.
Yep.
It's a big knife. Big blade. I mean, it's...
well, it's a 9-inch long knife.
Yeah, so it's, just keep that in mind. And it's got heavy serrations.
Mm-hmm.
They're big. This is a heavy cut serrated knife.
Yeah.
If you can imagine that in your mind.
The serrations are the sizes of hoses, basically.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
Now, on December 30th of 93, the same year, the defense attorney, Ron Lax, interviews neighbors of the Hutchinsons and is told that Aaron Hutchinson was at the trailer park at the time of the murders and not at Robin Hood Hills witnessing the murders, as he had told the police.
Oh, so you're telling me the 8-year-old doesn't know what he's talking about?
Yeah, and really we didn't get too much into what this kid said because a lot of it was bullshit anyways. But, he said that he'd seen some crazy things, like, he was forced to drink blood, and they were spilling blood in buckets and all this. And
weird things.
What's interesting is that there was no blood found there, but...
There was no blood found at the scene either.
Yeah, very little at least.
Right. Leading into 94, January 18th, jury selection begins for Jesse and Miss Kelly's trial. 8 days later, John Mark Byers is questioned by police about a knife belonging to him. I wonder why they do that.
Yeah.
Why would they do that, Adam?
Well, what had happened was, as a late Christmas gift, or maybe they had it for a few weeks, the HBO film crew had received a knife from Byers.
Really?
Yeah. I was kind of a thank you for coming here and filming all this disaster. I don't know why.
Why would they question him about I understand it's weird that they're giving him a knife.
And a used one at that. It was noticeably
it was a
used to some
used one.
degree, yeah.
Oh.
They had found blood on it.
Where was the blood found on it? I believe it was found in the crotch of the knife. It was a folding...
it was not a switchblade.
It's a folding knife with a lock.
Yeah, like
single
one of those
blade.
ones you'd go buy at Walmart.
Right, little pocket knife with a clip kind of a thing.
Yep.
And at the hinge, there was a little bit of blood, what they believed to be blood. Now, the HBO crew, I believe they must have sat on it for a few days while they considered sending it into the police or not doing anything, because the fact is, after covering this for so long, they've kind of grown to be friendly with Byers and all this, and they didn't want to stir the pot, and then everything's going on with the Miss Kelly trial.
Right.
But, of course...
And to be fair, I wouldn't really want to play games with John Mark Byers either. Not only is he a parent of one of the kids that have been murdered at this point, when you watch him in the documentary, he acts kind of weird.
And he's
kind of a weird guy. And
he's a big man. He's 6'5", 240 pounds. Looks like fucking Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. He looks like white trash Sasquatch, but that's okay.
What had led them, or what had given them the idea that this knife had been used?
Well, just that
when they found the bodies of the children, they had seen evidence that one of the children had been
castrated.
Castrated.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh.
One of them had the skin of his penis missing.
Yeah, what it looked like was his testicles were completely missing.
Cut off.
And the skin on his penis was removed, like peeled off.
Oh.
And also, some of them looked like they did have stab marks. So this is why these knives kind of play a big part into the story. You know?
Wow. Okay.
And so these kids were hogtied with their own shoelaces and potentially stabbed, and one of them castrated.
Ouch.
So that's the big tie-in with the knives on this.
Did it get cold in here? I felt the energy drop real quick.
Well, I think it might be the description of what they were looking for.
Trying to recover this. Help me out here.
That's why there's a knife involved. We had to bring that
you're
gory
right.
details up into this story. Unfortunately, it happened.
So it's thought that this could have been the potential murder weapon.
Yeah.
To some degree.
So he gets brought in, questioned about this knife. There was blood found in what Adam calls the crotch of the knife. I guess we'll go with that.
Yeah, at the hinge.
And later, can't really go that far in, I guess.
When they had interviewed Byers about the knife, he had said it had never been used. There would be no reason as to why there was blood on there.
I remember this. He got very specific about the things he didn't do with the knife.
Right, he had almost never,
defensive.
And,
yeah,
and he goes, I would have never. He goes, I would have. I haven't cut myself. I haven't skinned deer with it. I haven't done any hunting, anything with it. He got very specific.
But then later, when questioned in court,
and this was after the test results came back, I believe,
that it had matched the blood either of his or his son's. They were close.
Stepson. And this is a stepson, which is what's kind of interesting about that. They're not even blood related, but
similar blood types. I believe it was a similar blood type.
Bingo. And in 1993, that's all they had, and probably with such a small sample.
Right.
But you're right, Sarah. His story did start to change.
Yeah. Well, when they had interviewed him in court, they had said, "You said this, right?" And then he
kind of played dumb in a way.
Well, no, and he then said, "Yeah, I might have cut myself."
After saying,
why didn't you tell us that? Oh well, I didn't think to tell you that.
I might have remembered it later on in the day, I think he says.
Right.
Yeah.
He sounds very incriminating in court. He incriminates himself.
He does make himself sound weird.
He does. And it's not only just what he says in court, it's some of the things that he does in that documentary, too.
And we're certainly not saying Mark Byers had anything to do with this.
No.
We're going to look down that a little bit later, maybe in part 2.
He incriminates himself through this whole thing. He's very resistant to, well, I wouldn't say resistant to questioning, but he's very defensive.
Yeah.
Very defensive.
Yeah, he definitely sounds it and looks at even his posture on the stand at this time.
Oh, yeah. Okay, anyway.
So, yeah, and then so this brings us a little over a week later, on February 5th of 94. A jury convicts Jesse Miskelly on 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. He is sentenced to 40 years, life plus 40 years in prison.
Okay, so how does that life plus whatever work? You already have life.
You know what? I've heard people joke about that where they're like, yeah, they leave you there for another 40 years. But really, the way it works...
Wouldn't surprise me.
The way it works is that he would have been found guilty because what he says, and it's so much to cover, but in his confession, he basically says that one of the kids was running off, and he grabbed that kid and brought him back to the other 2. Mm-hmm. For that one, he would have gotten the life sentence because if he doesn't grab that kid lives. Now, the 20 years for the 2 other children, totaling the 40 years, that's tacked on because if you don't do that, it's almost like they don't get anything for, he doesn't serve any accountability for those kids being killed.
Okay.
It's kind of where that comes from.
Okay.
And so with him getting life in 40 years, I'm wondering what Mrs. Byers had to say about that.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Let's see if you can find a cut-in for that.
Oh, I'm sure I can find one. Watch this.
Melissa, it must be mixed emotions because you have the guilty verdict, but you still have the loss to deal with.
This doesn't change anything.
Our son was still murdered.
Dead.
Our son
and he was tortured to death by 3 murdering bastards on a ditch bank. He was 8 years old. And guilty is guilty. And I hope the little sucker, when he hits Cummins, they get his ass right off the bat. Because he deserves to be tortured and punished for the rest of his life for murdering 3 8-year-old children.
She's a very colorful lady. Very, very colorful language, to say the least.
And I wonder what the other family members of the children that were murdered had to say.
Well, the thing is, we haven't said a whole lot about them throughout this at all because they've kind of acted like typical grieving parents.
Oh, you mean people that don't want to be in the spotlight?
Well, here's the thing: is it's not about the spotlight. It almost seems like John Mark Byers looks for the camera, where they kind of look to grieve and do their thing. So throughout all this, when you watch the media and you watch the documentary stuff, you see them making little statements, but for the most part, trying to keep to themselves, and they're quiet.
Do you think he looks for the camera, or do you think he looks for people to listen to his grieving? Do you think that's how he grieves?
That could be it. And then you have the other fathers like Terry Hobbs and Michael Moore's father. They kind of just are off.
Yeah, they're kind of. I'm not going to say hands off, but they're like, let me do my thing.
Right. Let's just Pam Hobbs had made some statements.
Yeah, was she the one that looked kind of like out of it the first interview?
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Blonde hair.
Yeah, that one. Okay. Yep.
Or dirty blonde hair.
Yeah. Yep. And Michael Moore's mother, she's just like Michael Moore's father. They they don't want to be. I don't think they necessarily want to be part of this documentary. It's very painful for them.
Absolutely.
But they're there. The judge allowed it, and it's all out there.
And we're definitely telling this from the perspective of the documentary. It's just that it's that good. It's that thorough.
Well, it was filmed in live time,
right?
So like Terry Hobbs is there. He's sitting in the courtroom. There's times that you see him whispering to John Mark Byers and all this. But definitely what I feel from this after the conviction is that all of the families are happy with this. They feel like 1 down, 2 to go kind of a thing. And
justice has been served.
Yes. That's how I feel like
good.
they feel.
Make America great again.
So, Jake, why don't you take us into February 17th? Yeah.
Sorry. That was inappropriate.
Well, no.
February 17th. After being pressured by prosecutors and receiving a promise that his girlfriend would be allowed to visit him in jail, Jesse decides he's going to testify against the other two, Eccles and Baldwin. He makes a statement under oath accusing Eccles and Baldwin of murdering the 3 boys, but the next day he says, fuck that, and changes his mind and says, I'm not testifying. I'm done.
And do you know why that is, Sarah? He says that because basically he was starting to realize that all this shit's happening to them because of the statement that he made to the police during that interview. And he's now, as you know, recanted all that and said, this is not true and all this. And he says, I've already said enough to hurt these guys. I'm not going to say more against them that just isn't true.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to continue this path of lying. And I think he's kind of smartened up to
So he's
what's really
realized
going on.
he's been boxed in at
He's
this
been
point.
very fucking confused. I mean, he, you know, didn't even know what the lawyers were doing and all this to their full extent.
But he does realize that he's been boxed in, and now it's too late.
In the circle or out of the circle.
Right. Exactly.
So what he ends up doing, like you said, he changes his mind, and he's not going to testify against them.
The next day, the two other boys,
Eccles and Baldwin,
go on trial in Jonesboro, Arkansas. The jury selection also begins that day. About 9 days later, opening arguments are presented, and when do they start jury deliberations?
That was a little over two weeks or so later, around March 17th. That's when the jury deliberations began.
Oh, so they had what, 2.5 weeks, something like that, of trial?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? With the media and all that, also often, like with a lot of cases, I'm sure that the jury probably went in there already having their minds made up.
Well, there was one that was appointed to the case who had already found these guys guilty.
Had already made up their mind.
He already made his mind up prior to the trial. He was going to convince everyone that they were guilty.
So he'd already had his mind made up before even heading into court for day one.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've done jury duty, and they try pretty hard to keep you, well, I'm not going to say really hard, but they tell you right out, you're not to watch any media pertaining to the case, you're not to discuss it with anyone. Sometimes they'll make you put your phone in a room. When we were doing jury selection, they let us keep them, but they told us don't have them out in court, turn them off. If we see them, we're taking them. It was a lot like going to class.
They weren't messing with cell phones in '93.
No, of course not. But you know what I'm saying.
No, I know what you mean.
They were very strict about what you
could and couldn't do.
Right.
But you know what? One thing they did have in '93, they might not have had cell phones. They had fucking media the way we do now. Although it's worse now.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's debatable. So everything is slanted one way.
It's safe to assume that, you know, they go home, they watch the news, they hear about all the bad shit these 3 kids did,
well, who
and
doesn't
they
watch
keep
the
that
news?
all in their mind as they're sitting there in court.
Right. So how can you have an open mind on things when that's what you do? You want to go home, you want to carry on with your life, and that's what's playing.
Because basically, as you watch this trial unfold, what you see is that there's no evidence linking these guys to this case, to these murders.
No, and what's crazy is during this whole trial, it's all speculative. Oh, well, they like death metal. They like Metallica. They like all this weird stuff. But there's no hard evidence. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of blood evidence. There's not a lot of hard-hitting shit that says these guys did it, except for, they look weird.
Right. Well, basically, that's what I'm saying, is that it seemed like it was a lot of character defamation. Is that how they call that? Where they're like...
Yeah, I think so.
Where they're like, well, you know what? Well, this kid likes Stephen King, and he likes, you know,
well, they're going
heavy
off
metal,
a lot of...
and his buddy Baldwin is going to do anything that he tells him to do.
Well, they're going off a lot of hearsay, and let's not forget, this is the Bible Belt, too. So back in 90 whatever, and
93,
maybe I can already feel it in my bones. I'm going to hurt someone's feelings here. But they're very religious.
They are,
and and a lot of people down in the South, I feel like, at least at this time, are very driven by religion.
Yeah,
and they're gonna base a lot of their decisions based on how they feel religiously.
And looking at how they presented Damien Eccles as this witchcraft
Satan worshiper, witchcraft fucking weirdo.
Yeah,
runs around in black, like. if you had him in 2011, 2012, when I was graduating high school, he would be the kid that literally only wore Hot Topic, chain pants, and all that crazy stuff.
Right.
You know why he wore black?
No, I don't, actually.
His girlfriend liked him in black. She said he looked good in black, so that's why he decided to start dressing up in black clothes.
Oh,
and you can explain he read Stephen King because he liked Stephen King. And that was something that came up in the trial.
Just goes to show the power that women have.
Yeah, right. Well, basically, I mean, you can't convict a guy of murder without any evidence.
What I'm talking about is close.
Well, no, here's the thing is they convicted him on his clothes. They convicted him on
what he liked for music.
And no evidence.
And what his spiritual beliefs were, and that's it.
And basically what it came down to was Jesse Baldwin followed him.
Jesse Baldwin.
Who
the hell is
I'm
Jesse
sorry,
Baldwin?
mixing these. Jason Baldwin.
There we go.
Jason Baldwin was going to do anything that Damien Eccles said.
Right.
And so on March 18th, the jury finds Eccles and Baldwin guilty of capital murder in the deaths of the 3 children.
Damn.
Yeah. Now on March 21st,
3 days later.
Yeah, the sentencing phase of the trial begins. The jury sentences Jason to life in prison and Damien to death.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And,
well, he likes death metal. Maybe he'll like real death.
The date of Damien's execution is set for
funny.
May 5th, as Jason is incarcerated in the penitentiary at Pine Bluff, while Damien is sentenced to death row at the state's maximum security prison near Varner, Arkansas.
Jesus.
Yeah, and that was kind of a crazy part, too. You guys remember where Judge Burnett says, do you have any reason why sentencing should not be imposed right now? And Jason Baldwin just looks blank and says, because I didn't do it. He's like, I don't even can't even believe what's going on now.
What do you guys think about Bernadette?
Burnett?
Yeah.
Bernadette.
Bernadette's a hoe.
Bernadette's a hoe.
But
and I don't like that judge neither.
How do you think he handled the trial?
Well, basically, the way I saw it, and I'm glad you're bringing this up, is that he was very one-sided. He was going to let the prosecution do whatever they wanted. Well, the defense, he made it as hard as possible. Because he made his mind up, too, who was guilty.
Yeah, I felt like the only evidence that could be presented to the jury was guilty. They were guilty.
Yeah, that's certainly what it seemed like.
Yeah, it seemed like that's all he wanted to hear.
The media, the judge, the jury, everybody, everything was stacked up against these 3 kids.
That's definitely what it felt like to me, too. The other thing I noticed about the judge during the trial, and it really, really upset me, I'm not a guy that's all about, going. You have to go to school to be smart. You have to have a college degree to be intelligent, whatever. But there was a guy that testified for the prosecution that was like a witchcraft professor or some
to be like
dumb shit.
A doctor of that kind of shit.
A doctor of bullshit,
all
basically.
by mail.
Yeah, and it was like a mail order PhD. And the defense brought in the pamphlet from the university that this doctor claimed to have got. This doctor claimed to have gotten his degree from, and he goes, "Oh, what the hell that cost you? $45.99?"
Yeah, because what Jake's saying is that basically
he's a mail order doctor.
You fill out the form, you give them the $50, they mail you a diploma, and you can be a doctor too.
Yeah, well, I'm a doctor of making my own goddamn podcast. I have a PhD too.
We have it on a fucking shed wall.
Yeah, well, if we don't, we're going to make them. I'm going to go home and Photoshop that shit tonight.
What did Burnett say, though?
You tell me.
It doesn't matter what, if it's a mail order, if you...
He says that he doesn't believe that in the state of Arkansas, you need to have any kind of degree in order to be an expert in anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he went to law school, and he didn't have to get a law degree to be a judge.
No, he could have just went into the courthouse and sat at the fucking desk.
Oh, well, Jesus Christ. Maybe I should go try that tonight and see how well that goes for me.
Yeah, seeing as this podcast isn't making a whole lot of money.
Yeah, no. Well, that's because you haven't set up Patreon yet.
Yeah, we'll have to get on that and the hoodies and such. But anyway, so on May of 1994... Eccles, Baldwin, and Miss Kelly, they start to begin their appeal process. Mm-hmm. And this is a very long, drawn-out process that can go on for a matter of years. Mm-hmm. February 19th of 96, the Arkansas Supreme Court issues a decision upholding the convictions of Jesse Miss Kelly. So that was a no-go on his first appeal.
Okay, so hold on. Does anyone know when Eccles was supposed to be executed, because I believe it wasn't long after he was convicted. Well, he was sentenced. I think it was like a few months after he was scheduled to be executed.
No, what had happened is that he sentenced it to be on May 5th. I know what you're getting at. I'm kind of confused about that. Because that's not normally how it works, because it's an appeals process, and that takes a matter of years.
Well,
and
right, but he was scheduled to be executed.
He said May 5th.
May 5th, okay. And then very early May, he appealed it.
Right.
Okay.
And so
I just wanted to make sure that we had gotten
right,
that,
but
because
here's the thing.
Kind of important.
One thing that I don't understand about that is the judge says that he sentences him to death here on May 5th. But the thing is about that is that I don't know if what that meant was that was the date. And that's significant because that's a year later to the day after these incidences happen. So it's almost like it happened the year prior in 93, and then on May 5th, he's being sentenced to death. Okay. But the appeals process, you have many appeals. And then once the appeals run out and you have no more appeals, that's when they start considering when you're going to die.
Oh, okay.
And that's why people sit on death row for 20, 30 years because they're running out their appeals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So that's kind of how that happens now.
So February 19th of 96, this is about 2 years later. We already talked about the Supreme Court.
Right.
Okay,
yeah, the Supreme Court basically denied Jesse Misskelley's first appeal.
Correct.
Okay.
That same year, I'm assuming sometime in the summer or something, I'm not quite sure. In 96, the first Paradise Lost, The Child Murders of Robin Hills Hood, premieres. It suggests that Eccles, Baldwin, and Misskelley were wrongfully convicted. Hey, sounds like us.
Yeah.
A website, wm3.org, dedicated to serving justice for the Memphis 3, is established.
And there's some people involved in this, like Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. Mm-hmm. And
Johnny Depp,
and
one of the girls from Dixie Chicks.
Was it Natalie or Nicole Maine? Something like that.
Natalie Maine.
Yeah.
She comes into play way later on.
Yeah, well,
but I believe she's in it from the beginning too, isn't she?
Well, and the thing is because the first movie comes out, and as we've stated, as we've gone through this timeline, it kind of does point in the direction that these kids might be innocent, but it also shows some other people like John Mark Byers just acting kind of strange. And I'm not saying he did anything, but just acting strange.
And one person we forgot to mention, you guys, what about that kid that came in that was supposedly with Jason
in jail? He said that he
testified in court.
What was that kid's name? Yeah. That was really
I can't remember, but that was part of the court where he said that Jason had admitted to things.
Okay, so just for the listeners, there was a young man that was brought in as a witness for the prosecution. We forget his name. He was brought in to testify against Jason and Damien, and he basically said
that Jason had admitted to cutting off his balls,
putting them in his mouth and sucking the blood out.
Yeah, and sucking the blood out.
Yeah.
And then after that, they had found out that this guy who had, testified against them had all kinds of convictions against him, and he was known to be a liar. And then, later on,
I believe I read something that it was either his psychiatrist or his lawyer said something like, "Don't believe a word he says," to the court. Yeah. Like, he is a straight up liar.
Yeah. And then later on, he's on tape saying, "I lied."
Yep.
And his mother even was like, "I couldn't believe that my child would lie about something like this."
Right. I remember that.
And even though this is happening on December 23rd of 96, that same year, the Supreme Court also decides to uphold the convictions of Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin, denying them on their first.
Wow.
Yeah.
So during this whole period of time,
Burnett is still the judge, right?
Yeah.
Well, guilty.
Yeah, of course. He's the judge for quite a long time afterward too. During this whole time after they've been convicted, this wm3.org website pops up. This is a site dedicated to bringing justice to the three people who a lot of people felt were wrongly convicted. This group of people spans all over the country. I believe they originated in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And it was a small group of people that were paying attention to the media coverage and were saying, "Oh my God, this doesn't make any sense. What is going on here? There's no hard evidence. There's no real anything to grab onto here."
And one of these people in this organization is Lori Davis, and she plays into. She ends up kind of building ties with Damien Echols a little later on.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too. But during this whole time, this group is trying to help the three boys. So moving forward, but 3 years later in June, Judge Burnett denies a petition for a new trial filed under the Arkansas Rule 37 for Damien Echols. A couple of years later, Lori Davis, you know more about her than I do.
Yeah, so what she ends up marrying Damien Echols, and they have a Buddhist ceremony performed in the prison. Now, she is one of the leading members of the WM3.org, WestMemphis3.org organization.
I believe she quits her full-time job to work on this case.
Quits her full-time job in New York and moves out to Arkansas to be a little bit closer.
Mm-hmm. To try to help Damien, because no one's helping him. He's the one on death row.
Right. The only thing that's really helping these guys is their support and also the release of that film.
Right.
And that kind of leads us into March of 2000.
Hey, look, we survived the millennia. Yay!
Yeah. And unfortunately, these guys are still in prison, but the second film of Paradise Lost 2 comes out. And that premieres on HBO, rather. And the film, in this case, starts to suggest that John Mark Byers might be the guilty party.
Well, here's the weird thing about him, too. And we'll speculate a tiny bit later on. But the thing about him is during the trial, he incriminates himself. It almost seems like he's searching for the camera when they're doing the documentary, like at every opportunity. I'm sure he wasn't actually doing that all the time, but just the way he was portrayed made him look weird.
Yeah,
it really did.
Yeah,
but we're gonna get into him.
You kind of
later.
asked the question. Well, maybe.
Well, and I think what Jake's trying to say is that the documentary, the way it was put together, makes him look weird, but maybe in real life, his behavior really wasn't that odd.
Maybe it wasn't odd to the people around him, but I know when I was watching it, I'm like, he seems a little odd.
Right. I see what. Yeah, that's kind of what I think too.
Yep.
Now, in February of 2001, Edward Mallett, an attorney for Echols, files a right of error in Arkansas Supreme Court, arguing that Echols should never have been tried in '94 because of his mental condition at the time.
He was kind of a smartass. I wouldn't consider him mentally unstable, but I mean, you see footage of him waving at people through the cop car windows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and playing around with the mirror and just kind of acting like he's not paying attention.
Just being a douchebag. You know what I mean?
Well, he's arrogant, and he at the time thought that how are they gonna nail me on these charges when they have no evidence?
Mm-hmm. Right. So he didn't. Being young, being 18 at the time, he was playing games of it, and I think his attorney's taking advantage of that, saying, "Well, look, he was crazy. He was crazy. See how he was behaving." But
look how he's dismissing this.
That was denied. Now, on April of 2001, the Arkansas Supreme Court rules that Judge Burnett failed to give sufficient attention to Echols' arguments in his rejection of Damien's Rule 37 petition. The Supreme Court sends this case back to Judge Burnett for further consideration as the issues presented in the petition, which is basically that there was no evidence against him.
Wow.
Yeah, and so he's just like, basically what this was all about was that there's no evidence against me, but all the new evidence that's come out in these years following this case is showing that it's somebody else. So there's no reason to keep me and others behind bars, but Judge Burnett, being the way he is, totally dismisses all of this.
Right.
Now in 2002, the book that we had mentioned earlier, Devil's Knot, comes out. And this one here also strongly suggested there is a leak in the justice system here, that something had gone wrong.
Common themes.
Now, what was the evidence that they had presented that told them that it could not lead to them?
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah, why don't you take us down there, Jake?
Okay. So I remember one thing specifically. We'll talk about this more in a later recording. Do you guys remember that Jesse Miss Kelly had said that they had tied the kids up with rope?
Yes.
Well, they hadn't actually tied the kids up with rope. Whoever had murdered these kids tied them up with shoestrings.
So you're saying that they basically started tearing his interrogations apart a little bit more? And piecing that together? Some of the other stuff...
I guess. I don't know. I don't know what was going on through their heads at the time. But they started looking into more things, and I don't know if it was found at this point, but basically there were DNA samples that were found that did not point to any of these kids.
Right. There was a lack of evidence.
And the judge just didn't want to hear it.
There was another one. They had thought that there was a belt buckle on the head of one of the boys.
Like he was being whipped type of thing?
And, yeah. And later, with different doctors or investigators, they had found that it wasn't a belt buckle. It was a bite mark on his face.
Well, what was interesting was during the trials, they had suggested that these bite marks were caused by humans. Yeah, that was the suggestion, and you can
so that would suggest
to
me that we need some dental records.
Right. You can kind of see that in the images, but then the dental records of Eccles and Miss Kelly and Baldwin did not match this. And even at this time, some people do suggest that it might have been caused by animals, though a lot of people still maintain that they look like human bite marks.
Okay.
And now where the kids had been found in the water, there were a lot of turtles.
That's interesting.
Now, the question was, okay, was one of the little boys mutilated or...
You mean castrated?
Or castrated, sorry, excuse me.
Well, same thing.
Or was it the turtles who had
grabbed
bitten
at
it
the
off
soft tissue and pulled it off?
Bitten off because they go for soft tissue.
And when you think about that...
Probably easier to chew.
Now, this hasn't been proven yet, or hasn't necessarily been proven, though there was a number, like she said, a number of doctors that looked at it and said that the original autopsy reports were bullshit. That they were probably not... It probably was not a belt buckle. Probably was not bite marks from a human. And then when you start to think it could have been turtles, and you look at the shape of some of the bite marks on the victims' faces and on their bodies,
it looked like it could have been
kind of looked like turtle bites.
I believe they had even I remember watching some video, maybe it was that documentary that I fell asleep through, sorry, that I had seen it, but that doctor, some really intelligent person had actually taken a turtle and bitten into a pig cadaver.
Yeah.
And it had the exact same pattern.
And if you notice, they stated, it does go for the soft tissue first.
Well, here's the other thing that came up as evidence, too, that I found. The kids looked like they had been bludgeoned or beaten with the end of a gun.
That's right.
They had a bunch of... I don't even know how to describe it. I guess there were some indents.
The heads were smashed in with something.
With what looked like the end of a gun.
A butt of like a handgun or so.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a bunch of new evidence, and none of it points to these three boys.
And I believe they did find a 9mm handgun several years later in that area.
No
shit.
In the mud,
yeah.
Huh.
So that would follow with that.
Huh.
How about the hair that they found in the shoelaces?
Well, that comes up in a few years.
I think, isn't that a little further down the road?
Yeah, because right now we're in October of 2003.
Yeah. In an interview with the Arkansas Times, some reporter, I guess, or is it Arkansas Times?
Yes.
Or Arkansas
Times reporter is what I believe that paper's called.
I hope you're right, because this... Okay. Vicky Hutchinson says that everything she told the police was a lie. Oh, look, it's like I called it, lying bitch. And suggested that the police warned her that if she did not cooperate with the investigation, that her child would be taken away. Well, maybe you shouldn't commit credit card fraud. Maybe you shouldn't be getting yourself in trouble.
She kind of got herself out of that.
Maybe you should be a model to your fucking child.
Yeah, don't
Sorry, now I'm getting heated.
People of doing something that they didn't do and bring your child into it.
Yeah, that's a great lesson to teach your fucking kid.
Either way, that's a small part of this story. What happens in 2007?
That gets me heated. In 2007, DNA evidence was collected at the crime scene. It was tested, blah, blah, blah. None of the DNA, like we said, was found to match any of the three boys. There was a hair found in the knot used to tie up one of the victims that is found to be not inconsistent with one of the dads, Terry Hobbs.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
inconsistent does not mean it is his.
It means that they can't rule it out.
It's a roundabout way of saying we're not sure.
Right.
What it is.
What it means is they can't say it's not his hair.
Right, but they can't say
that it is.
It is.
Where in some cases they can say this is definitely not this person's hair.
Right. Terry Hobbs is the stepfather of Stevie Branch. I'm sure we mentioned that at some point. In the same year, John Mark Byers has turned his attention back to the media, and he says now he believes that the 3 young boys that he was so adamant about convicting are innocent. And you can hear him say it for himself right here.
But what's right and what's wrong are 2 different things. And the right thing is that these 3 men are innocent. That's the right thing. And yes, it was hard for me to stand up and admit that I was wrong. But wrong is wrong.
So to me, I'm going to be honest, watching John Mark Byers throughout this whole trial and this whole ordeal, it seems like he likes attention and he'll swing to whatever seems to be the popular thing. But that could just be me being outside of the situation. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
We keep saying that all night, and it's just who he is.
Yeah,
really.
I guess
what it comes down to. But as this is going on, we'd mentioned Natalie Maines from the Dixie Chicks.
Yeah, Natalie Maine comes out and implies that Hobbs was actually involved in the killing of his own son or his stepson and the 2 other boys.
And Sarah, you were saying while we were taking a slight break here that Dr. Michael Baden, who is a renowned forensic pathologist out of New York City, was also looking into some of the autopsy photos, and he was also one that had ruled that these bites were most definitely caused by large mammals. Also, some of the scratch marks were not what appeared to be scratch marks were not serrations from a knife, but more claw marks from say a turtle or something. Mm-hmm. So that's something you had mentioned that we wanted to bring up also. And there was also another hair that was found at the time that had tested to be African American. So these are all things that...
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, it's not... These 3 guys that are in jail are not African American, and their hairs were not found there. There was somebody else's hair there. I'm not saying that an African American did it, but it's just evidence that somebody else was there that was not these 3 guys, potentially.
Okay.
And also, on another side note, because what's happened here in 2008, 2007, 2006, this is when DNA and testing has really ramped up. And so when stuff that they were not able to 100% prove in 93, 94, they're able to do so now. So another hair that was found at the scene that they had held on to also tested to be positive to one of the friends of Terry Hobbs named David Jacoby.
I don't like his last name.
So what do we have here at the scene?
3 hairs, supposedly.
Well, what we have is a scene that was originally viewed as being some kind of cult practice. That's kind of what they said. Damien Eccles was into the cult and all this, and this was some kind of a cult thing. Mm-hmm. And so they tied these kids up, and they bit their genitals, and they bit them all over their bodies, and they stabbed them, and they smashed them, and they threw them in the water. That's what they had painted to the jury in the very beginning of all this. Yep. But now, as time's evolved, it doesn't look like their ball. One of their balls was bitten off, and the blood was drank. It's looking more like animals had done that post-mortem. And there's no evidence necessarily leading to them being sexually assaulted. And there certainly isn't any evidence, DNA or otherwise, linking Jesse Miss Kelly, Jason Baldwin, or Damien Eccles to the scene. But there is an African-American hair. There's a hair of Terry Hobbs and a hair of Terry Hobbs' friend. Potentially, yeah.
Potentially,
can't
it's
say
very
it is,
important.
You can't say it isn't, but
it's not inconsistent.
But you can say it wasn't Damien Eccles' hair.
Right.
The only thing that, it looks like is that it was just a dump area, because they also said that there was no blood evidence either.
Right.
And even if there was, it probably would have all seeped into the ground.
And
so good luck cleaning it up.
And what Sarah means by a dump area is that it looks like they potentially were killed somewhere else.
Right, exactly.
Because there just wasn't enough blood
for
it to have taken place there.
In the 15 years that these guys had wasted their lives in prison, mm-hmm. everything has changed. All the information, all the evidence surrounding this case has totally flipped and has shown their innocence. But however, on September 10th of 2008, Judge Burnett again denies the request for retrial, upholding that DNA evidence produced by the defendants was not, conclusive enough to merit a new trial.
What do you mean? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. None of it points to them.
He's old school, and guilty is guilty.
Guilty is guilty.
Ugh.
I'm ignorant. I'm not going to listen to anything.
Okay, so on November 4th of 2010, 2 years later, the Arkansas Supreme Court orders a trial court judge to determine whether newly discovered DNA evidence or evidence of juror misconduct justifies a new trial or exoneration of the 3 defendants. So it looks like 2010, things are going to start turning around.
Yeah.
At least for the law system.
Right. Well, things are not looking good, at least on their end. And then on August 19th of 2011, Eccles Baldwin and Jesse Miskelly are released from custody following the deal which the 3 men agreed to admitting guilt on murder charges while still maintaining their innocence in exchange for their release without parole.
And time served.
Now let's talk a little bit about that. That's called an Alford plea.
It's called the fucking ridiculous plea.
Yeah, and there's a little bit about that too. So basically, this was like an immediate emergency type thing. They were pulled into court. They knew this was probably going to happen. And so the Alford plea means it's basically you say, I did this, but I didn't do this. I'm maintaining my innocence, but I'm going to plead guilty. And they release him on time served, which was 18 years and so many days. What had happened was, of course, Damien Eccles was like, they want to fry my ass. They tried to do it 3 times. I'm taking the Alford plea, and I want to get out with my life. And of course,
Right.
Jesse Miskelly felt the same way. But Jason Baldwin, being probably the most clean cut of the 3, and we've said that the whole time, he wanted to hang out in jail for a while. He said, you know what? I want to be found innocent because I did not do this. I just don't want to admit guilt, and I've sat here, and I'm willing to wait here long enough. But after he thought about it for a while, and the situation that, say, Damien Eccles was in and that others were in, he
just decided to plead guilty, even though he didn't do it.
Yeah.
No, to me, that's just... I hate that plea because to me it sounds like the court system just didn't want to admit they fucked up.
Well, they didn't want to be sued.
Well, and that's another thing, yeah.
Well,
Sarah.
and that's another... And you're right, because in that plea deal, you agree that you cannot sue the state
Well, you're
afterward.
guilty. You're guilty.
Right.
Well, you're a convicted felon. It's on your record.
Well, I believe that's part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Part of the terms and condition of the release is you can't sue the state after because you're pleading guilty, but you're not. So you're pleading guilty. You're going to have that on your record forever. To me, it just seems like it's just a way for the state to say, we fucked up, but it's still your fault.
But if you're these guys and you've been wasting away for 18, almost 20 years.
But how are these guys going to get a job?
Well,
these guys have been in since
Well,
they're 16, 17,
they're
18 years old.
They're activists. They're authors now. I mean, life has turned around for them. But the fact is that these guys are out of prison because they didn't do it. And now you have 3 kids that are dead.
But
and,
who didn't?
And killers that are roaming the streets.
Who didn't?
And that's something...
I'm going to plead guilty to something that I didn't do. But meanwhile, the case is closed.
There's no justice.
But there's no justice, and someone is out there
running away and getting away with it.
Yeah.
And so really, you're back to square one, where you have, and we'll discuss this in part 2 a little bit more, a lot more. But
there's a part 2?
Well, spoiler alert.
Thanks, Adam.
But no,
I did so good to alluding to it.
What you have here is that who are the people that are closest to this that you could kind of look at? Well, there's obviously John Mark Byers. There's Terry Hobbs. There's the African-American man that was in the Bojangles, and there was the hair.
I really don't feel like we brought up the African-American man that ran into the bathroom.
Well, we
talked.
talked
If
about...
we did not mention that fact because I remember, I don't remember that part specifically.
We didn't mention the fact that somehow the blood evidence was lost.
We did mention that, I think. Or did we not mention that it
No,
was
I
lost?
don't think we did.
We mentioned that they
Oh
collected
yeah, by
it.
the way, we're going to wrap this up with all the things we forgot. The blood evidence they've recovered from Bojangles when the African-American gentleman ran into the restaurant with blood all over his arms and ran into the ladies' bathroom was lost in trial.
So they can't match it to the hair.
So they can't match it to anything, basically.
Lost blood, a hair that you can't match to anyone. Okay.
Yeah, this was a really big story.
No, you can't cover
That's all it
everything
was.
in it. It's
No,
just too
you're
much.
right. No, you're right. But we can't miss the big things. That's kind of a big thing.
Yeah, because it could have been a closer for this case.
Right.
It could have kind of led us in a different direction.
But then
I don't think the Arkansas Police Department gave a shit back in
and
'93
the fact,
enough to do it because
and the
they
fact
didn't do
is,
any evidence.
They didn't look for this guy. They never looked for the guy at the Bojangles, so it really isn't any kind of a deal breaker.
It's kind of crazy because it's the same night that all happened.
This
too.
guy could have been in California by the time they decided to collect the blood.
Right.
Or in some other country.
Who knows if this person that ran into that Bojangles that night was someone who happened to be there when it happened, and now I'm stuck in it.
And the truth
because
is,
I witnessed it.
The truth is, a good chance that
know.
hair is just a transfer. They got it from some kid at school or from,
It's possible.
anyways. So you have that guy, you got John Mark Byers to look at, you got Terry Hobbs to look at, and some people still consider the West Memphis 3.
It's a big story.
Yeah.
We'll get into more speculation in the spoiler alert part 2. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah. So
we're supposed to sell it out like that. That's all right.
Well, would this be a good time to wrap things up?
I'm hoping so.
Sure.
It's getting pretty late.
What's our social media?
All of it. It's a great question. Stall us for 10 seconds when
Okay.
I bring it up, please. Sing the Jeopardy theme song, damn it.
Do 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 do
do. Social media. Facebook, Stories from the Shed. Instagram, Stories from the Shed Podcast. YouTube, Stories from the Shed Podcast. Twitter, Stories from the Shed. I'll be honest with you guys, Twitter sucks.
Twitter's gay.
Twitter is really gay. I am not a fan of Twitter at all. Don't be upset that we use that word. Oh, Jesus Christ, I can already see it now.
Yeah, we don't mean it in a bad way.
iMessage, if you guys even use that. sftspodcast@gmail.com, and that's also our email. Send us an email, guys. We're talking about making sweatshirts and weird little things like that. What was it? Sweatshirts, hats, and t-shirts?
Yep.
Possibly. So if you guys are interested, send us an email.
Let us know.
All right. Thank you for hanging out, Sarah.
Yeah,
doing
thank
all
you.
the research,
Thank you for having me.
reading the book, because I wasn't about to read that. It's 300 pages that I don't have time for.
And she does.
Good night, guys.
Bye.
This is not right. And the people of Arkansas need to stand up and raise hell because 3 innocent men are going to have to claim today that they're guilty for a crime they didn't know. And that's bullshit. They're innocent. They did not kill my son. And this is wrong. What the state of Arkansas is doing to cover their ass. Amen. And I'm sick of it. Amen. Because the real killer is walking around free.